What's up, everybody? It's Catfish and Ice Podcast, brand new episode 224, coming up to you on NHL trade deadline day in 2024. So it's really awesome day, fast-paced moving. But to open up episode 224, really excited because we've got an amazing guest and I'm really, truly honored to have on Sam Jefferies, author of Legacy on Ice, Blake Geoffrion, and The Fastest Game on Earth. Sam, how are you doing, man?
I'm great. It's funny to be talking to you on trade deadline, and here we are bringing everything back 20 years. But you know what? That's just it's the way podcasting world works, right?
It works perfect for me because it's going to give everybody a taste of a little bit of everything. Because we've gotten so many trades in the last 24 hours, you can never get too much trade drama, at least if you ask me. But this is a nice change of pace here. I cannot wait to talk about your book. Blake Geoffrion, of course, was a draft pick of the Predators back in 2006. I was just starting to watch this franchise around then. So this is going to be just a great historical thing for me today. And I'm sure all of our listeners and viewers are going to love this as well. So, Sam, first thing I really want to ask you is, how did you get into writing this book? How did you take on this project? Give me the backstory on it and that stuff.
Yeah, so I went to University of Wisconsin, was there when Blake was there. So I really followed his career as a collegiate player, played for the Badgers. He came in a year after they won the national championship in 2006. And then I came in a year after he started. So his sophomore year. And I grew up a big college hockey fan and then also really knew the Geoffrion name and Boom Boom Geoffrion, the inventor of the slap shot, right? And so was drawn to that. That was an incredible story coming in, and then watching him and his brand of, for me, like a true 200-foot center style player, and so really enjoyed that. Watched and loved his Hobey Baker season. Goes on to win the Hobey in 2010. Takes the team to national championship game, and then has this unbelievable story of being a homegrown Nashville kid. I mean, grows up in Williamson County down in Brentwood and grows up, playing youth hockey in Nashville, and then gets drafted by his hometown team, gets to play, gets to make his mark in that way, and then gets traded to, this team that his family legacy becomes not only the first fourth generation NHL player, but the first fourth generation Montreal Canadian as well, and everything that comes with that. So that was so fascinating to me. And a friend had kind of pushed me to, he said, I've been dabbling with magazine articles and stuff. He said, that's too easy for you. You gotta go write a book. Do you have any ideas? And I said, well, I think there's this amazing story about this guy, Blake Geoffrion. And I started digging into it, and I realized that there was so much more to him and to his story. He shows up in all these weird places in North American hockey history. And one of them was, being that homegrown Tennessee kid, coinciding with the Predators coming to town and this rise of hockey in the South at the same time. And I got to dig into that more and more, and then realized that, his story was in so many ways the linchpin of why hockey is such a phenomenon in Tennessee, and how, the opening of General Motors auto plant down in Spring Hill ended up being such a driver of that. And so digging into that really, was a cool journey for me and a privilege to write about.
Very cool. Sam Jefferies, author of Legacy on Ice, Blake Geoffrion, and The Fastest Game on Earth. Yeah, so, hockey was definitely skeptical about how it was going to work out in Nashville, in 1998 when the team got announced. I'm sure very well, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this first before we get more into Blake Geoffrion. But just kind of in your research for this book, like, what were the biggest challenges as far as making hockey grow in a place like Nashville that's known for college football, and hockey was just a new thing? Youth hockey has obviously exploded in Nashville here in 2024, but back then when Blake Geoffrion was coming up, it was still a really new thing. So kind of give me your thoughts on what you came across there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple things. one, a lack of ice, and two, a lack of, awareness and knowledge of the game. And that started to change when this auto plant opened, and all of those, they have a national union contract, so by seniority, workers are able to take those jobs. And so these guys started coming down from Michigan and from Wisconsin and Illinois, and their kids all played hockey. So they brought that with them. They brought a love of the game. They brought their kids' love of the game. And I'm a parent of a hockey player. Your kid says they need ice time. Like you move mountains, you find them ice time. And so, that was such a constraint, though. Ice is not easy to come by. No pun intended for the South and climate and everything, but it's just not, right. I mean, building rinks and adding new sheets of ice is expensive, and they got to be convenient, and you got to have people who want to use them, and then you got to have people who are willing to pay, to uphold the rink. So as those things come together, and as you have more ice and more awareness and more, desire to watch the game and support hockey at all levels, then you start to build some of that enthusiasm, and it, there's a bit of a positive feedback loop. But then, it's funny too, even going back into some of this history, like the Predators announced their first sweaters with Blake Geoffrion. He's like an elementary school kid, and he and his brother are sitting with Barry Trotz at a mall, and they're rolling out the jerseys, and they're putting them on these little kids, and they're all draped over them. But that was because of his family's legacy, his family history, and that they're this French Canadian superstar family who ended up in the Nashville area, and so when did they get the call from Barry Trotz, like, let's put the boys on a stage and put a jersey on them. So it's just like, that's a wild thing for an NHL team to do.
Yeah.
Right?
And then they ended up drafting him in 2006. Okay, so I want to kind of get into that. So Blake Geoffrion, tell me kind of about his journey from being just a superstar at the University of Wisconsin, and then, I mean, everyone knows how hard. Well, first, actually, let me backtrack a little bit more. How much different is NCAA hockey and the journey out of that type of system compared to someone who goes the other route, like a prospect that goes goes the route of the AHL first, or goes to which I know Jefferies did play in the AHL as well, but I'm just curious because not everyone comes straight out of college hockey. They come from overseas, and there might not be a huge difference, but I would love to get your thoughts on that. And then I would also, of course, like to hear Jeffrion's initial journey into the NHL and the AHL.
Definitely. Yeah. So really two main paths. There's the NCAA path, and then the major juniors path. And major juniors eligibility starting at 16. Now, they're not mutually exclusive, right? And actually a lot of guys will play out their juniors eligibility and then enter college as a 20 or 21-year-old freshman. And they've physically developed, and they've played a lot, but they're bigger and stronger, and can skate faster and everything else. And then increasingly, you have guys who are going, real stars who are going in to the NCAA right away at 17 or 18, and they're smaller, but they're higher skill because American hockey is leaps and bounds what it used to be, and the players are just better, and there's more of them, and they're coming in more polished. But it's a long running debate, juniors versus college. The Canadians are very disparaging about college. Some of it I think is because they don't want to see their players go play in Boston or Wisconsin or Minnesota, but some of it too, what they'll tell you is that there's basically double the number of games in a major junior schedule. So these guys are just getting a lot more time playing games. And that's cool and great. But what the college coaches will tell you is that fewer, bigger, better is actually the better path for developing young players specifically. When you're doing practice 6 days a week and you have 2 games a week instead of, 3-4 games a week and riding the bus, bouncing around, rural Ontario or the upper Midwest or what have you, you have a lot more time to really finesse, develop those skills. So that's a long running debate, but like I said, they're not mutually exclusive. You do have guys who will play some of their juniors eligibility or all their juniors eligibility out and then come, which means you get 26-year-old college seniors, and that's crazy too, right? Because those guys are big and strong. And so Blake ended up going straight into college out of the national team development program in Plymouth, Michigan. And at a time when that program was really exploding, when his roommate was Patrick Kane, they went on to win the U18 gold medal that year and really helped to cement that program become what it is today and have all these, young budding stars come up through it before they go to the college or the junior ranks. So he did that, went to Wisconsin, and then, another cool Nashville connection is he wins the Hobie Baker. He's this college hockey superstar in Wisconsin, and then moving to the AHL and signing his first pro contract, he just goes right down the road to Milwaukee, gets to play for the Admirals, and gets to jump right in, really steps out of his senior year, steps right into the beginning of his pro years, and then finish his degree a couple weeks later. So a neat thing for him to be able to fly that flag in more than one way.
And that's got to be a hard transition in itself, just going from NCAA college hockey to the AHL, which is it's more of a defense first rugged lead. You're going up against AHL veterans who might not ever be in the NHL, but that's their league. And I'm sure it's a lot harder. I've always heard it's more harder hitting style of hockey in the AHL. It's not as much finesse. Maybe that's changed more now, but that in itself is a hard transition.
And listen, if you're a college stud and you go right into the AHL, you got a target on your back from day one, right? And
that's what I would expect.
No fighting in college, not really. Mostly because they have cages on, and they've tried to move away from that. There's fighting in the AHL. There's a lot, right? Like I've been to my share of AHL games, and they don't not shy about dropping the mitts. And if you're a rookie stud and you were with the Coeds a week ago, man, you come in and some of those veterans, and whether they're lifers and guys who've knocked around the league, or NHL guys who are bounce back and forth or whatever it is, they tend to come for you in a pretty big way.
Definitely. So you said inventor of the slap shot. So I really want to get into what were some of Blake Geoffrion's biggest strengths as a player that really allowed him to have such a decorated college career, and then to get drafted, I mean, in the second round of the NHL draft, 56th overall. I mean, I don't think people appreciate sometimes enough how hard that is in and of itself, just to even get drafted into the NHL, much less, play a couple seasons and all that. So kind of tell us what his biggest strengths were, what made him just such a good player.
Yeah. Well, I'll say first, and not only was he drafted in the second round, but it was actually the Predators' first pick. And I got to interview David Poyle for this book, talked to him a couple times, and he had reminded me that the Preds had traded away their first round. And so this was the first guy they took off the board entirely. And so a pretty cool moment for a hometown thing, but then also really, there's a lot of belief that goes into making that pick. And, I think for me, Blake's strengths are, this is cliche, but are his weaknesses. So the fact that he was never the greatest skater, or never had the best wrist shot. He had weaknesses in all these parts of his game, and it forced him to be a more well-rounded player, a guy who was really willing to take it into the corners and be tough, massive crease presence. I mean, like a great tipper of pucks, and phenomenal about getting in front of the goalie and getting greasy goals. He really was outstanding in front of the net, and then had a monster slap shot. I mean, his great grandfather, there's some great stories in the book about this, but invented the slap shot. His nickname was Boom Boom Jefferies, and it was not a kind nickname. They gave it to him because they said there are two booms when he hits it, and then when it hits the wall, because he couldn't hit the net with it. But of course, then it goes on and becomes what it is today, right? Which is this. It's like one of the coolest things in sports for me is a big clapper, and so Blake developed his own, and he the one timer was just phenomenal, and being able to watch that at the college level and then at the pro level before he was injured, was an incredible thing, especially because, the Geoffrion name. I mean, in doing it, not only was he trying to put it in the back of the net, but he was honoring his grandfather too, right? And what he'd come
So
from.
cool. So amazing. And I think that's one of the coolest nicknames I've ever heard
Oh
personally.
yeah.
But
yeah.
a couple current Preds player connections there in terms of how you were describing that. So first of all, when I think net front presence and owner of the crease, I'm thinking Ryan O'Reilly.
Yep.
So that kind of gives me a little bit of an idea there, gives me a connection. And then when we talk about just crazy slap shots, of course, Roman Yossi for the Preds right now.
Yeah.
And his one-timer ability. So getting a little connections there for people who maybe are, because there's a lot of new fans to this fan base, as I'm sure you know, Sam, that probably weren't watching the Preds at that time, or maybe they weren't even hockey fans yet at that time. So this conversation is just amazing, and that's why this book is just on the top of my list for sure to read. I cannot wait to read it. Sam Jefferies, author of Legacy on Ice, Blake Geoffrion and the Fastest Game on Earth. Let's move a little bit more down the pathway here. What happened with Geoffrion's career after that? I know it's not necessarily what you would call pretty at all, but definitely gives you an idea of how hard it is and how physical and how demanding a sport like hockey is. So kind of without giving it away too much, obviously, because we all want to read the book.
I'll give it away. I mean, you Google Blake,
Yeah, I know. But I mean, obviously a lot of people probably don't know this story at all, maybe.
Sure.
It's an amazing story. So tell us kind of what happens after that a little bit.
Yeah, well, and this gets into part of the structure of the book too, which is that fundamentally this guy's career was very short, right? He did not play many pro games, and just as his career is taking off, he is being traded from Nashville to Montreal, had to do with the playoff race, and just if we're talking on trade deadline day, right, rejiggering rosters and all that. So he goes to Montreal, starts, is getting playing time, and then the 2012 lockout happens, and he's on a two-way contract. So at the time, all the professional, all the guys with pro contracts that weren't two-way went to Europe. They went and played in the KHL in Russia. They went and played in Sweden or Germany or wherever. And the two-way contract guys, the younger guys, ended up getting sent to the AHL affiliates. So when Blake's in Montreal, he gets sent to Hamilton, Ontario, plays for the Hamilton Bulldogs, and the world is starved for hockey. I mean, it's late November and everybody's dying because they haven't seen the NHL in months, and they having a hard time finding a stream to watch Czech hockey or whatever it is, right? Any glimpse of the guys that they love. So, but they brought this one game back to the Bell Center, to the home of the Canadians, to play. So it's really a game that's never been played. And then here's Blake playing on big ice under the banners of his grandfather and his grandfather that have their numbers retired. And he ends up in a freak thing. He gets hip checked. He cartwheels to the air, and he skate of the defender. Guy on the other team slips under his helmet and fractures his skull. Wow. And they rush him to surgery, and it's a moment where the attention of the hockey world kind of turns to it, because there's no other hockey going on, except these waited out while the union and the league are negotiating games. And then here, in Montreal, this happens. His parents were in the stands. They thought it was a concussion initially because he's holding his head, but then, they go to the hospital and they have to sign away, the rights to do emergency surgery. So I ended up interviewing surgeons and trainers and nurses who were in the hospital, and just a really terrifying thing that even, not CTE, nothing about that, but a freak accident. But, these guys are moving so fast across the ice. There is so much power in every stride, and there are sharp objects too, right? And that is a reality of this game for sure.
Definitely very scary stuff for sure. And I mean, you see it, all the time with pucks to the face, guys putting their bodies on the line to block pucks on a penalty kill or whatever it is. Just saw that last night in the Preds game against the Sabres where a player took a nasty stick to the face and immediately blood's pouring everywhere and he went right off the ice. It shows how tough as nails these players are. And so kind of give us what's Blake Geoffrion up to today? I know he's what's he up to and how do we follow him and stuff?
Yeah, he was so he's doing fine. He's healthy, and I mean, look, he's got a titanium chunk in his skull, so that sucks. But can't play hockey anymore. But he's doing great. We've done joint book signings, and he was in the hockey world for a long time. He was a scouted in the Blue Jackets organization, and then he was an assistant GM in the Panthers organization under Bill Zito, who was his old agent. And then, he ended up taking a step back from hockey, had young kids and moving over to the business world. And so he's really successful on that. And what's been cool about this book coming out is he's heard, and I've heard, it is also a leadership story. I mean, especially after his injury, it's a story about resilience and fortitude and how you spend your whole life training for something. I mean, vacations, and he didn't have any friends who didn't play professional hockey because everybody he knew, the circle got tighter and tighter, right? That's how he spent all of his time for so many years. And so losing that in one fell swoop, was such a blow. And yet here he is, having gone through the rehabilitation, having gotten away from, prescription painkillers and all that. And being back, being healthy and somebody who I can sit next to, we can joke about, and we can talk about, some of the more serious things too. So we did a signing in Madison, Wisconsin when the book first launched. We've done a few joint interviews, and then we're coming to Nashville in a few weeks. We'll be right about a month, April 9th. The Predators are hosting us, and they're doing a whole thing where you buy a ticket and you get a signed book. There's a pregame reception, and I'm hoping Ryan McDonough stops by too. Ryan was on the Wisconsin team with Blake that went to the national championship in 2010. So he's he's another guy I spoke to for the book and interviewed and talked to him between Stanley Cup runs down in Tampa. But now a league veteran, but I really talked to him about his freshman year on campus and what it meant to play for Blake and then to be a tri-captain alongside him.
Ryan McDonough is just the top masterclass of just being a leader and being a just everything you want in a captain of a team. So that's a really cool connection as well. And so so everyone try to make it to the game April 9th. Get a signed book of this amazing book here. What are some other ways? Obviously on Amazon, there's plenty of other ways to get this book as well, right, Sam? Yeah,
Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you see it out in the wild, tag me on Twitter. That's always the coolest thing is to be able to see your physical book. Like I spent years, working on this and did a million interviews and talked to, a lot of different people. And I think really was able to uncover some incredible stories about hockey and about how it works and what it means to play, but also about life and people and family and all that, and a ton about Tennessee. And I have not been for years. So I'm really excited to be there and to sign some books and I've just made some amazing connections through this process. There's a company called Vintage Ice Hockey, and they, I don't know if you know them, Chad, but they make jerseys and t-shirts and things from defunct hockey teams, right? And so if there's a hockey team, minor league team or pro team or whatever that has since gone away, they'll take the logo and they make cool shirts and mugs and, sweaters and all that.
That's a cool idea.
So they're sending us a bunch. There's all these defunct Nashville teams, the Dixie Flyers and the Ice Flyers. And so they're sending us a bunch of gear to wear. And, just that cool connection for, we're in the 25th anniversary season, but there was actually a lot of hockey history in Middle Tennessee before that, and a neat thing to be able to remember, some of that while doing this as well.
So the first hockey game I remember going to, and this is obviously when I knew nothing about hockey except for fighting. There was a team called the Nashville Knights, and I don't even know
Nashville Knights. Yeah.
You might have to remind me what league they played in if you know or not. But we went to a game, and I just remember there was so much fighting, and there was like no one really playing hockey, and the crowd could not get enough of it. They were just all they wanted to see was fights. I mean, I was pretty young. I'm 35 now, so I couldn't even tell you how old I was. It was definitely it had to have been mid to early 90s, but that's my first hockey experience was the Nashville Knights. So that would be cool to have a Nashville Knights.
Yeah, no, the Nashville, that's some of the stuff they're sending us is the Nashville Knights gear. And that's how I came to hockey too. I grew up in Seattle and there was no pro team. Now we have the Kraken, but we were watching WHL, which is, major juniors, but same thing. Just it's the old Rodney Dangerfield line, right? I went to a fight in a hockey game broke out and there was a ton of that. So it's not that I don't love that, but I've really, similarly you come to love hockey, and so it's cool to see the evolution and be able to follow the course of a season, and then in researching this book really understand how these guys come to the roles they play on the teams, how they come, how they interact with the team they're playing for versus just trying to do their own thing and be the best player they can for the moment. So yeah, I mean, incredible journey, and there's really nothing like getting on the phone. I interviewed John Hines for this. Like I said, I interviewed David Poyle and Ryan McDonough and Patrick Kane, talked to Kaner for a while, and being able to hear from them some of the stories that even now 20 years later still stand out for them as being pivotal, and this is what I want to do with my life.
Wow. And I talk to friends all the time in Nashville who are, they're diehard college football, they're diehard baseball, whatever it is, but they're starting to come around to just how beautiful of a sport, how amazing of a sport hockey is. And it's for some of the fans, it's very daunting for them because they got to learn everything. But I'm like, just appreciate the game. Watch the players move without the puck. Watch how they make a line change look so effortlessly. And before you know it, you'll be a hockey fan. Just give it and definitely go in person. You got to go live. And that'll change it for you as well. But one more thing I wanted to ask you real quick, Sam. So I see John Buccigross on the cover. Yeah. What's the John Buccigross connection in this book?
Yeah, so Bucci, he knew Blake. Bucci's obviously like big college hockey booster, right? And is always tweeting about college hockey and has his line of merch about it. And so I asked Blake, I said, would he be interested in writing the foreword for the book? And he said, yeah, why not? So he just puts us on a text chain and said, hey, Bucci, this is Sam. He wrote this book about me. You should talk to him. And Bucci goes, great, give me a call. And I'm like, dude, you want a time? You want to schedule it? Because you are literally doing Sports Center. You're anchoring Sports Center. I don't want to call when you're taping. And he's like, nah, just call me whenever. It's just a wild thing. So I called him. We ended up chatting, and he had written this article about Blake for ESPN the magazine back in the day right after he got injured, and he kind of asked me without asking, like, did this really deserve a book? And it was when I started talking to him about these different moments about the history of amateur hockey in the United States and why 1980 could have been the beginning of the end, and there was this major revival through the National Team Development Program, or how it really took these unionized auto workers moving from Michigan to build up a fan base worthy of the Predators in Nashville, and then bring youth hockey with them, or how the Richard riot, which is in the book, is a famous moment in Canadian hockey history when they rioted in downtown Montreal because Maurice Richard was suspended, has a Geoffrion component to it. And he goes, okay, great. You sold me. I got it. I love it. Send me your book. I'll read it and I will write the foreword. And he did. And he's been amazing on the promo too. I think he's been a little jealous of not being at some of the events we've done, because the guy loves to call hockey, but also loves to go to the bar and storytell and everything else. But yeah, he's just been total G about it. It's been cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Can't wait to read this book. This has been our special guest, Sam Jefferies, author of Legacy on Ice, Blake Geoffrion, and the Fastest Game on Earth. We will be putting it out on all of our social media how to get this book. Try to make it to the April 9th game for this book signing against the Winnipeg Jets. Sam, I hope we stay in touch. This has been really awesome.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. What a blast.
All right, it's trade deadline day, so stay tuned. If you're listening on our audio version right now, we got some live trade deadline reaction coming up. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe below, comment on the stream, rate it, and we will see you later on today for more NHL trade deadline discussion.